call the Board of Aldermen meeting to order for the City of Warrenton for October 15, 2013. We always start the meeting off with the Pledge of Allegiance, so would everyone stand and face the flag for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John wants to sing the chorus and take me off the ball.
John does.
John, he does that.
You can be on, John.
I think the people would rather not hear it.
One of the things I would ask from the audience, if you have a cell phone on, would you turn it off or switch it to vibrate so it doesn't distract the alderman during the meeting. First item is approval of the minutes, the approval of the meeting minutes from October 1, 2013. Any discussion, changes, or additions?
Motion for the approval of minutes of October 1st, 2013.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Ock, seconded by Alderman Dreyer to approve the regular board meeting minutes from October 1, 2013. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
Abstain, I was not here.
Motion carried 5-0 with one abstention. Executive session minutes from October 1, 2013.
Are they in the drop-down box?
Yeah, they're in this special confidential box.
I didn't.
I'll make a motion to approve the executive session minutes from October the 1st, 2013.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Flake, seconded by Alderman Casterly to approve the executive session minutes from October 1, 2013. Roll call, please.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
Abstain.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0 with one abstention. At this time, we give the public a chance to address the board. We ask that you keep your remarks civil and 5 minutes or less. So if anyone would like to address the board, please come forward to the podium and state your name and purpose of business.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, my name is Stan Shelton. I've been asked by several residents about what I thought of the audit that was handed out a little over a week ago. And first of all, I'd like to thank the 600 citizens that signed a petition to have the city audited. I think it turned out good. I like what they had found. I think it was worth the money. I think the $2 that they found with the ticket, not collecting the $2 per ticket, will pay for the audit of something like $45,000. I know by the municipal court you lost $6,400 last year. So a few years you'll pay for this audit. What I think was interesting in the audit was the different things they found on the land purchases. In January 2006, where the IDA board had borrowed $908,000, and basically the city of Warrenton was going to be the co-signer. If they couldn't make the payments, you guys would. The biggest thing that I seen from that was after you paid for the money, whatever it turned out to be, here they say over $700,000, you wouldn't own it. And it looks like here in the agenda for tonight, you might be rectifying that. But that's been over, what, 7 years? So that was a pretty good find. Then this 6.9 acres, you buy it and no appraisal. And Mr. Cornell asked the auditor, you didn't know what the value of the land was. And his statement back was, if I only had paid $20,000 an acre, I would want an audit. And the city paid $114,000 an acre. So that was some pretty big findings. The other issue was the insurance. And with the insurance here, I'd like to read the last paragraph, or one of the last paragraphs they wrote While the former mayor abstained from the discussions and decision related to the health insurance, the city has obligation to ensure potential conflict of interest and opportunity for personal gain are avoided. In addition, the city conflict of interest policy states no officer or employee shall profit from any contract, sales, services between the city, the person, or company. There's a problem there. I'll leave that statement. My personal belief, if the other insurance agencies that were bidding on this, if they don't sue the city, I'll be surprised. That's my own personal belief. And to me, first thing they would do is call the state auditor. By the last thing they wrote in it, says, by not providing the same level of information to all potential bidders, the city process was flawed. My only complaint with the audit was the report of good. You got a good report from the state auditor. But by the way they do their rating system, the Captain Smith of the Titanic would have got a good rating, but he went down with the ship. Mr. Mayor, you said in the paper that the auditor found problems, but they were easily fixed. I would like to ask you, how are we going to replace this $1-point-something million that's laying out there that we have no benefit? We can go behind the theater and look at $791,000 that's been sitting there for over 6 years.
Do you want me to respond to that?
Yes, if you would.
I don't want to take, if I respond, I'm taking part of your 5 minutes.
I'm done.
You're done?
I'm
Okay.
done.
All right, all right. And I will respond to the public on that. First of all, we're happy the audit's completed. I mean, that's been going on for, ever since I've been in office, it seems like the audit's been in progress. It's not fun having those guys camped out in your office. I mean, it would be like the IRS coming to your house and setting up shop and say, we're going to be here for 6 months checking over your financial records. So a lot of work and energy on the staff went into this audit. Yeah, we're happy they're gone. We're happy about a good report, or what they rated us as good. Some things were easy to fix, and I think my comment was really referring to the things that were broken that were easy to fix have been fixed. Some things aren't so easy to fix. And I do agree with Mr. Shelton's comment about the municipal court situation. That was a positive find for the auditors, but a positive find for us that we had something broken and we didn't know about it. And we fixed those immediately. The real estate issue, that's a long-term fix. In fact, this board is going to have some off-site strategic planning meetings coming up, and that'll be one of the topics that we're going to address on there. Yeah, there's no easy, and that's a concern for the city and this board and myself. How, what are we going to do about it and how are we going to fix it? So, okay? Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Any other person in the audience would like to address the board? Okay, if not, then I'm going to extend that same courtesy to the Board of Aldermen. Anyone would like to address the public or make comments to the general public? Let's start on Alderman Clark.
I'd like to respond a little bit to Mr. Shelton's remark about it'll be paid for, the $50,000 the audit's going to cost us. With the $2 ticketing, that cannot be used for that, if I'm correct on that. That only can be used for training.
Well, I think what happened was, I don't want to speak for Mr. Shelton, but my understanding of it was, the way the auditor came out was, there was a $2 surcharge added to the court costs to pay towards the domestic violence shelter Turning Point here in town. And there were certain cases that were being dismissed, such as no insurance tickets, that the $2, if they just didn't have it, they'd come here and show proof to the clerk. And essentially what happened was that $2 was being paid out of general revenue, such as court revenue, rather than the $2 being collected additional to the $2. So basically, court costs were $24.50. The board approved the ordinance making it $26.50. The $2 were still being paid over, but it wasn't collected on all the cases that were.
So, and Am I correct or not correct about the,
I think partially correct, Alderman Clark. The $2, the $2 were coming, some of the $2 was coming out of general funds, or general revenue funds, or as opposed to the court revenue funds, as opposed to being collected on top of. So, you know, I think it's speculative at best to say that it would or would not have, but the funds, $2, some of it was being paid out of general revenue, which would have been applicable to paying for an audit or whatnot, if that makes sense.
okay. What I think with the city, what we really need to focus on more than anything is the good rating. I understand there's only now 3 in the state of Missouri with a good rating, and that's something to be very proud of. I think it shows that there is a lot of effort and work done towards it. The other findings on it, at least I agree to them to a certain degree, that with the findings that he had, and I think we can correct that fairly simple. It's just a matter of following through. I think the board, I wasn't part of it in the purchases, but I have been in purchases with the city with other properties, and we may not officially had a appraisal, but we did do our homework. At one point, we even had a realtor on the board, and we used a lot of his advice on appraisals type things and what he sold properties for. So the board did do appraisals to a certain degree on our own, checking different prices of the property that's sold. So we just didn't do the official appraisals. But I'm very proud of the city with a good rating.
Alderman Ock?
Well, I don't know that we need to take a lot of time on the audit. I've probably in my lifetime been audited 80 times on various contracts, financial reports, and I look at an audit as an opportunity to affirm what you do and to find out what you need to improve, and I think that's exactly what happened here. I think the state auditor affirmed that overall the city does a good job, although he did point out some issues that we need to work on. I think that's the whole purpose of an audit. I think the reaction I've got from people who've talked to me since that is I think it's helped to go a ways to restore some of the confidence they had in the city, which is what you're looking for. They still recognize that some of the decisions or some of the actions that were brought out were probably improper or certainly not well thought out, but it does do something to restore some of the confidence, and I think that's part of what I've seen from the people who've talked to me, that is indeed there, although they do say they do have an issue with some of the things that were found, but we move forward. In any audit, I'm always, you're years behind, as Terry well knows, and you want to get on with life, and I think that's what we need to do, get on with life and make the improvements and fix what we need to fix and try to restore the confidence of the general public in the city. That's all.
Alderman Casterly?
I'm pretty glad we have some things I want to talk about down here, so I'm going to take a
You're
pass.
going to reserve your comments till later. Alderman Cornell? You know there is a ball game tonight.
I know, but you know I never take a pass.
Okay.
You know, I've been asked by some individuals a two-pronged question. That question was, one of them, do I feel like the audit was worth the cost to the taxpayers? And the second part, if the city should feel vindicated by the good rating. The audit did what it was supposed to do. I think all audits, I never once felt that the auditors would come in here and not find suggestions. My only concern with the cost has been the concern I've expressed from day one, and I've reiterated that to Mr. Shelton, was I didn't feel like we had exhausted all means of answering these current concerns and questions of the citizens prior to a state audit. There were obviously concerns, enough so that 600 citizens signed a petition, and you can't ignore that. I certainly wish that we could have addressed those concerns and seen if we could have satisfied those concerns and questions without the expense of the state audit. That being said, I think that it's hard to quantify when we talk about was it worth it to the city. it's hard to quantify those dollars spent. As Alderman Ock said, I do believe that is a certain segment of this community that it has answered questions, whether it confirmed their suspicions, whether it put to ease some of their concerns. I believe that they are now more informed. So I'm not really concerned at this point on whether or not we got our money's worth. I don't think that it is fair, for lack of a better term, to hold up the audit and all of the critiques and criticisms of the city and talk about what a good job the audit did of finding these problems, and at the same time criticize the audit for rating the city as good. I don't think that you can have it both ways. In the end, whether it's good, excellent, poor, the auditor has their opinion of it, and the citizens that read the audit will have their opinion. And as to whether or not the city should feel vindicated, why would we ever feel vindicated? That almost makes it it's an us against them, and I have never viewed it as an us against them. It's this board is currently, and I think it always has been, tried to serve in the best interests of the citizens, and I would certainly hope that neither side feels that they are vindicated or that this was a win for them. I just don't think that that is a proper way of viewing the situation.
Is that it?
That's it.
Alderman Flake?
Well, I just think that the audit overall, getting a good rating, I think was justifiable. And it proves that our city administrative people do a good job of handling the business of the city. There were a few discrepancies, and we're addressing those, and we have addressed some of them already. And I think it all turned out well, and it is what it is.
Alderman Dreyer?
Well, I don't have anything I should say, really. We got stuff I'd like to say, but I better.
Well, I think we all get caught in that position once in a while, so. So you no comments on your end? If Alderman Dreyer has nothing to say, then I'm going to move on to the mayor's report. I'm going to be brief. I have just a couple quick things. I want to say thank you to Brandy Walters and Brad Boozy Cruz for organizing the employees luncheon. I believe it was a week ago, last Friday. We had a great turnout, good representation. I think the employees all enjoyed themselves. Food was excellent. You all did a great job on that. So,
Guy was part of it, so was Doug.
Guy was just eating. I didn't know anything beyond that.
Big part.
Thank you, Guy. We do appreciate everybody's work involved in that, and I think we need to do that as often as we can, because sometimes the employees get left behind and think no one appreciates the work they do. So that was a neat deal. So the only other thing I had was I wanted to brief the public on last night was the circus. I got short notice yesterday from the circus people that they wanted somebody from the city to be there for the opening ceremony and ride the elephant into the ring. I made a quick trip through City Hall, see if I could find another alderman to delegate some responsibility to.
I was home.
Nobody was there. So I show up at the circus, and the ringmaster comes out, and he says, you know, here's Lisa, this big elephant, and he said, we'd like for you to ride her into the ring and give the opening remarks. And I looked down at the ground, and I looked up at Lisa, and I said, I'm not getting on that elephant. He said, the ringmaster said, you must be a Democrat. I said, a Democrat or Republican has nothing to do with it. That elephant is too damn tall, and I'm too old to fall off. So I didn't ride the elephant in. But the circus was very cool. The young people in the community, they liked it. They had a good time, and the Kelly Miller people do a good job of putting the circus on. So I think they had a good turnout, and it was well received, so. And that's all I have. Just wanted to pass the circus issue along.
You got something going
Well, I
on.
was going to say, I think you need to go in and be trained by the mayor of St. Peter's on how to be the mayor and go to the events. Our organization opened up a new building in St. Charles, and we asked the mayor of Warrenton, and we asked the mayor of several other cities to come, and the mayor of St. Peter's came, and he was not shy about standing next to the scissor and cutting it. Even though he wasn't asked, he just asserted himself and said, "This is what I'm doing." So maybe he would be a good role model.
I'll take some training from him. Very good. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. And I'm on item 7, introduction of Kevin Shaw, maintenance labor. Who's doing that?
Mayor and Board, I'd like to introduce you to Kevin Shaw, the maintenance laborer for the street department.
Kevin, welcome aboard.
Welcome, Kevin.
Glad to have you. And item B is James Noble, maintenance labor.
And James,
welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to have you.
And they're both they're in your department, Brad, or in?
With me, Public Works.
One each. All right.
Okay. And we've already approved their hiring and stuff at the last meeting. I'm on item 8, discussion. Open up the discussion for construction dumpster ordinance discussion. Who wants to address that?
Well, this has been my pet peeve since I've gotten on the board, so I was very, very pleased to see that that this was brought up this week. And Jack, do you want to discuss the actual ordinance, the policy here that you guys have written up?
Probably Mr. Graville.
Mr.
You have
Graville?
specific questions for him?
It's pretty standard. We looked at other cities. Most cities have a construction dumpster ordinance because it kind of touches on the nuisance and also to a certain extent zoning of property regarding, being an eyesore and being unsafe and being there for extended periods of time. We drafted an ordinance here that, I know one of the concerns that was brought to me was, well, what if I own a downtown business and I have a dumpster? That won't be affected by this. This is really, building a house, rebuilding a house, remodeling a house, throwing a bunch of stuff out. It's pretty, pretty simple the way it's constructed and the way it's basically designed. We try to make it, not too overly problematic for whether it's a builder or a homeowner that's remodeling a kitchen or bathroom.
I think the big thing here is, limiting the time, because that's been the problem and my beef with what we are seeing in the city is dumpsters. We have no ordinance to keep them from letting the dumpster sit there for 9 months, which is a complete eyesore and unfair to the residents in the surrounding areas, so.
And we left it there, Alderman Cassidy, for 5 days without needing a permit, so the person cleaning out their garage or whatnot, basically they could get it for a week and have it there and clean it out and not be required to get an ordinance or a permit.
Well, why is, I understand there's a specific issue this is about, property too, but I guess I don't understand under the ordinance, it says first 5 days you can go without a permit, then the time frame, and I'm in section 2 of paragraph of part D, then basically the permit is tied to the building permit, and then it talks about extensions on the building permit. If the dumpster is there more than what's allowed in the ordinance, are we not enforcing it, or are they getting through some loophole? Because isn't this dumpster on a piece of property that's been there for, in excess of 6 months?
Alderman Ock, I think what the situation would be paragraph 3, where it says permits issued for purposes not requiring a building permit will be issued for a 30-day period. So there's basically 2 permits, but it's 1 permit, but 2 situations, building permit in conjunction with the building permit so we can watch it, regulate it, close it out. And the second one would be kind of the situation that's popped up where it's been there for 6 months. Idea of giving it a permit so we can have a time deadline. They can ask for an extension. 1 extension is allowed. How long it can be there. And really, it's kind of like the sign permits. It also allows us to regulate, hey, there's trash coming out the top, or it's attracting nuisances or whatnot.
But in 3, it says, permit shall be issued without a building permit for 30 days, and only 1 10-day extension shall be allowed, so why is it there for 6 months? How are they doing this? Or are they violating ordinance, we're just not enforcing it?
We don't have this ordinance in the books yet.
Oh,
That's what
this is
we're trying to
proposed.
do.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was brought up by Alderman Casserly to Terry, and we kind of looked at it and said, and then we looked, most cities have some type of dumpster ordinance, kind of a construction dumpster ordinance. And we've had it in the past kind of occur, and we've kind of attacked it with nuisance, but, you know, this was how other cities have done it, so that's kind of what we put together in response to the inquiry about it.
Jack, have we had other issues in the city besides this one dumpster issue?
I believe that's the only one that I've been made aware of.
I didn't hear you.
That's the only one that I've been made aware
Yes or
of.
not?
I think I've been the loud squeaky voice.
Is this an issue relative to a fire issue?
To a rebuild.
To a rebuild related to fire?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And is the property owner saying, well, I'm not proceeding because the insurance company won't give me my money? Or,
The property owner is trying to get the contractor that the insurance company hired to finish the project. That's been the holdup.
And let me interrupt you. This, since I've been here, this is more of a common thing than your dumpster issue is fires in houses. And insurance companies are, and I know we got some here tonight, I might step on their toes, they're notorious for investigating all fires. They want to make sure they're not suspicious, make sure there's no arson. And I'm thinking of the Southside house, that we battled with that over a year, and I sympathize with the homeowner. He couldn't do anything because he was broke, and the insurance company wouldn't pay any money. This is a similar deal.
Yes, the building permit was issued in May.
In May, okay. And I got a call from the insurance company, kind of advising that the city was holding things up, you know. And after I checked with Jack, it really nothing to do with the city. It was more the architect and the electrical engineer have given us set diagrams and plans what they were going to do in the house. So, we battled those fire things. That's been going on a long time.
yeah, I know, when I was on before, we had a fire up in the garage up in, not Isaac Kent, but in one of the subdivisions up north, and every meeting, we had property owners showing up complaining about the garage not being finished, and the property owner would say, hey, I want to finish the garage, but we got to get this insurance company to give me some money. So it's really a difficult situation the homeowner's in.
It is.
It is, but in this case, these people had the construction dumpster hauled in. If at some point there becomes this issue on who's going to pay, it would seem that the logical thing is, you know what, come pick up the construction dumpster. It's an additional $200 cost, but it's not a $4,000, $5,000 cost. Pick up the dumpster. When that is resolved, you can restart, have the dumpster brought back up, so.
Do you think if we, I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here, if we get too restrictive on things, that maybe they'll just skip the dumpster issue and throw it out on the ground? I mean, is that a concern, or you think that's a concern, Jack? We're going to have debris blowing around all over the neighborhood. At least we're containing it in a dumpster now.
But if they do that, we've got ordinances to address that. This is kind of allowing you to enforce an issue that I don't think kind of fit through a loophole, and we didn't have a way to enforce the timeliness of it.
Is there a middle ground on this? I mean, you feel for the homeowner, but you also don't want to be the neighbor sitting next to the homeowner who has to deal with the dumpster. I mean, are we familiar with how the communities do it, or they just force everybody to move it off?
Well, we kind of looked at this as a middle ground because most cities, you can have a dumpster hit the property unless you get a permit. We gave it the 5 days, kind of thinking of, well, the person cleaning out their garage
Right.
is kind of the idea, and then not making it a permit that was cost prohibitive, kind of to the mayor's point, that if I gotta pay for a $100 dumpster permit, why get a dumpster? I'll just put it in trash bags and put it out by the curb. Kind of keeping in mind that it would be something different than we've had before. We tried to make it kind of simple and see how it goes, to see if it is an issue, see if there's a problem purchasing it. The fees were, we tried to make them as reasonable as possible for the cost of the dumpster. 25 and 15, which was lower than the other communities. So, you know, it's either you permit the dumpsters or you don't permit the dumpsters is kind of the idea. But we put that 5-day window in there for really, you know, if you're gutting a kitchen or gutting a bathroom or you're, you know, cleaning out your garage, you're probably going to do it within the 5-day window, especially if you know about that 5-day window. So.
Or re-roofing your house.
Well, I don't know about the
Or
five,
re-roofing your
Or
house.
re-roofing the house.
the 5-day thing. If you're doing it yourself, if you're as slow as I am at construction, it's going to take more than 5 days. And, but I would think what would limit it some is my experience with dumpsters is they're quite expensive to keep.
They are.
And how somebody's keeping it 6 months is, somebody's paying some big dollars just to have this dumpster, I would think, unless they have something separate. I hate to have an ordinance for a single issue. I think we're starting to micromanage what we're doing. It's got to be another way around it, and I would rather see something on that. If we have other ordinances that probably would cover it to a certain degree and be able to move it on.
Well, we looked at this one under nuisance, and we did have another issue. We had the burned out house that was over there.
Southside.
Yeah, there was a lot of complaints about that dumpster, but that was more of the fact that it was overfilled, trash was blowing around, and we attacked it with the nuisance. But apparently, this one, according to staff, is not a nuisance, where there's stuff blowing around or there's stuff sticking out or dangerous or whatnot. So really, we drafted this ordinance to address the length of time question someone can have a dumpster on their property.
This isn't a single issue. I brought one to Ms. Thorne, it was sometime in the middle of the summer, one that was actually put onto the public roadway and sat there on the city street for 3.5 months, taking up parking spots. So there are, that one, in that instance, we could deal with it in that it was on city property. But this is not an isolated incident at all.
So we've had two in how many years?
I don't know, that's 1 year that,
But I mean, Alderman Clark, to your point, when it's a safety issue or a nuisance issue, we have addressed it with the ordinances we currently have. When this one apparently is not a safety or nuisance issue that, at least from staff's reports
Because
on.
part of my concern is what the mayor mentioned, that
Yeah.
if the permits and the costs and stuff, people may just either elect to not do a cleanup or do it illegally or haul it off and throw it in somebody else's dumpsters or something. I understand that the 6 months seems like a long time, and I guess if there's a way around that I guess I have as much issue with the new ordinance with this time, the 5 days and 30 days. Sometimes those are, in construction, those are short time periods.
And I agree with Alderman Cornell here a little more on a dumpster sitting on the street. To me is a lot different than a dumpster sitting in my driveway. And I think we have a right to regulate that dumpster on the street.
Sure.
That's a safety issue and a nuisance. And I understand Alderman Casterly's position. They're not attractive. They you know, I'd get tired of seeing them too. But I think we're almost infringing on some property owners' rights there. We're telling them you can't have this on your property over X amount of days. So I think we have to be cautious with that.
well, at what point, I guess my question is, if we're not going to limit the time, at what point do we make them put an enclosure around it? Because it's no longer a temporary dumpster. If they're going to leave it there for 9 months, we make every other business in this community build an enclosure and keep the gates closed to limit the debris blowing around and limit the visual of what you have to see. So if we're not going to pass this, then we need to start looking at what we can do to make them build an enclosure around it.
Well, you're talking about now commercial versus residential. I mean, this is in a residential neighborhood, and we don't require those dumpsters.
And I would agree, but I think that it is even more obtrusive and unsightly in a residential neighborhood than in a commercial neighborhood. So I guess, I mean, we've discussed it for 10 or 15 minutes. I would say, let's put it on for a yes or no vote at the next meeting, and
Well, I'd like to see if we could do a couple little changes here. On point one, part D, I think 5 days is too short a time period. I mean, you know, for people who are working, let's say you're cleaning out the garage, you're remodeling, you know, 2 weeks to me would be a more reasonable time period, or 14 days than 5, because if you're just doing things on the weekend, that would allow you to have it over 2 weekends, which would seem to be reasonable. 5 days just seems too short, because I know my neighbor next door did the same thing. It sat there for 2 weeks on his property, and it was, you know, it wasn't an issue, because I could see him working on it constantly. So I think if we vote on this or move forward, I think, I'd like to see the Part 1 change from 5 days to 14 days.
Is there a concern you want to table this and tweak it a little more, or you all want to
Well, how do we
vote on it?
How do we tweak?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I
you
don't have
wanna-
a problem changing that to the 14 days.
Okay.
I mean, if that's the only concern with the, what were you saying?
And the way this reads, per number 2, this particular site has an active building permit, so it would be allowed there.
Right.
They still have a permit.
It's probably cheaper them to have permits than it is to haul the dumpster off and haul it back, in reality.
So I'm not sure that would resolve your issue. I think if you want to put an exact time frame on it, we need to put a time frame.
So you're saying if it's an active, where they have a building permit?
Well, because building permits are issued for 6 months, so that means right off the bat, they can have a dumpster there for 6 months.
6 months. So we really haven't,
And they've had an
We haven't
extension
accomplished
because they're having trouble with the insurance company.
yeah.
They are making progress, Gary. Hopefully they'll get this
You
wrapped
know
up.
what, you know what, though, that is, I'm sorry, to be a resident in that neighborhood and look out at a porta potty and a dumpster in the front yard of a residential neighborhood for 9 months now, I'm sorry, I absolutely get why these people are upset. I certainly feel for people that are having the problem with the insurance company or the contractor, but it seems to me like all they're doing is passing their problem on to the rest of the neighborhood. Boy, I think I would have
Yeah.
a few issues.
How are they passing on the rest of the neighborhood? They're following the law.
You're right.
You know, I mean, you know, my neighbor built a tree house, a playground out of my kitchen window, and the kids play out there and make a lot of noise. Well, I can't say, gee, you're disturbing my peace. You know, they have a right to do certain things, and here they're clearly under the statute, unless we change the statute.
I think that's the whole point, Gary. These are your constituents, by the way.
That's fine.
But I would have an absolute fit if the neighbor across the street from me had a porta potty and a dumpster in their driveway for 9 months.
Well, let's talk about the porta potty first.
Well-
Is that also permitted under here, or is that just something that they can do? I could,
Probably required during the
Well,
construction by the contractor.
What are they supposed to do?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
but I mean, I think all of us would get a little tired and a little upset that our property, what if you're trying to sell your house and next door to you has had this dumpster sitting there this entire time?
I understand.
I mean, it just, and I think that's part of what this community needs to focus on, not just the dumpsters, but all the other stuff that's making our community look bad. This is a really small step. I mean, we haven't even addressed the houses that look like they're falling down, the houses that have
We
3
got,
colors
well, we
of
got
paint, you
ordinance
know.
to fix
but
houses and stuff. They go around
to a certain extent.
to do the painting
To a
and
certain
gutters and
extent.
stuff like that. So, and mowing the grass.
Yeah, to a certain extent we do.
Well-
But there's a lot of them in town. Hey, we'll go for a drive after the meeting, and I'll point out a whole bunch of them that are within regulations that look like
and
crap.
I understand, I know
Yeah,
exactly.
but you
where
don't
you're
have to
at.
drive by my house.
But I understand where you're at, Carrie, and I don't know how we fix it, because you drive to communities like Forest, and I'm very familiar with that. It's an extremely clean community. If you park your car in the grass, the police are at you in a minute. If your boat extends across the sidewalk, the police are there in a minute. I mean, they enforce, and the community has been very stable throughout all the changes and the type of people, and I think it adds value to the home. So I understand that position, but this is difficult, so I don't know. If we were to vote on this, I don't know where I'd vote right now, I'd have to think about it.
And is that because of the 5 days, and then the change of the number 2, because we don't have a limit on the dumpster for during the building permit phase?
Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure that you all were aware that prior to voting on it, that the way it reads,
And you gotta
It
have a
says as long
dumpster
as
out
the
there
permit's
sometimes when
active.
you're doing.
But it's
They
not
can
gonna
have
change
dumpster.
anything, right? Because these people went 6 months, and then they extended their building permit, right?
yes.
So the dumpster extension goes with it. So you could pass this,
And
and
still
it
not
would,
correct
and it'd
your
still correct the
issue.
problem we're trying to correct. That's what you're trying to say, right?
I'm saying the dumpster would still be allowed as long as their permit is active.
Where do you want to go, board? You want to table it or vote on it and see where it lands?
Let's table it and see what kind of improvements we can make.
Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to table this discussion and direct the city councilor to make some changes in the proposed ordinance.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion by Alderman Cornell, seconded by Alderman Dreyer to table the construction dumpster ordinance and have Counselor make some changes and present it back at the next meeting. Fair enough?
Yeah, could we also have, maybe ask somebody from the city to make a contact with a few other cities to just see how they handle these issues? Because this is a very real concern I think she has, and we just need to figure out how to handle it. And maybe there's a better way, and that's just...
Well, we pretty much did that on Minock and looked at their regulations, and they do it by permit. But I think, kind of getting an idea for the timeliness, I think what we probably need to really look at is, because they do it by permits, that's pretty much what every community does, is look at how they handle the building permits when you have new construction, and that really becomes kind of the secondary issue. The remodeling the house, doing that kind of stuff, adding 14 days. You know, we looked at that, but it's more of the building permit issue where it could be out there for a year. So we can contact those communities and take a look.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
No.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-1. Alderman Clark, you want to comment on your no vote?
I personally don't think it's gonna, I don't think we need the ordinance. I think we have other ordinance that would cover it, and this, to me, this is a single issue type ordinance. And as was pointed out, it would not cover the issues that our alderperson has in, for this. So it's,
I
to
think
me,
that's
it's
why
kind
we're
of a,
relooking it. That's
to
what
me,
we're-
it's
Correct.
Yeah.
just a
Okay.
dead issue for me.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I'm going to move on to item 9. Truesdale's request to take over certain water customers. I thought we included all that information in the packet from the different water districts. I think if you look at that, it should be on the agenda. All the water districts have conceded they have no interest in or squalms about giving the water from one district to another, so no issue there. But I think Terry and I had this conversation. Our concern is we're working with the engineers on the wastewater system, and we're going to be scrutinized on some bonding capacities, and part of that bonding capacity is going to be what is our income off of the sewer and water thing. And I think if we give some of this away, and I don't even know if that's an option with the board to give it away, now is probably not a good time to do that. So my recommendation is that we put this on hold until we get on with the engineering process and see how our bonding capacity is.
I make a motion that we put on hold the decision about the taking over of certain water customers from the city of Truesdale and the city of Warrenton.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Casterly, seconded by Alderman Ock to put on hold the Truesdale request to take over certain water customers. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Casterly?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
Yes.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item number 10, discussion of implementing the use tax. And I don't know if Terry wants to address this or you want me to address it. I guess I brought it back to the attention. So I mentioned a couple things about it. At some of the mayor's meetings, talking with Truesdale Mayor and Wright City's mayor, they're going to put this on the April ballot to institute the use tax. And remember, we talked about it last year, and the use tax only affects buying things out of state, like buying boats, motorcycles, cars. The state of Missouri has a use tax in place, and they can collect their use tax money, but unless the city has their own use tax, it doesn't come back to us. So I asked Gabrielle to kind of research it for a year, see how much money we were losing, if is this really going on? And I think her last report said we were down like $500. So my point in asking you all to reconsider doing this is, I think the state of Missouri's working to implement a tax off of internet sales. And if that tax gets put on the books, I think we will need a use tax in place in order to participate in that. What did I leave off?
That was a good job, Mayor.
That's it. So
What percentage sales tax is the local use tax? It's not sale, what percent is proposed? You guys are thinking about this, so there has to be a percentage tied to local.
It's
The sales
it's
tax.
whatever the local sales tax is.
Whatever
So it's
your
the
local.
same as the sales tax rate?
Right.
now, if that item that's bought out of state, if there is a tax, a use tax collected on it, we
Right.
still can't collect the tax, only if there is no use tax collected on it. So I don't think that it goes on that much. My concern is more if internet sales do come about. I think we kind of need to be prepared. And if the other two neighboring districts are going to put this on the ballot, I think we could cabbage on with them, and it'd be easier to sell if 3 people are trying to sell it versus 1.
Did you say cabbage?
Hook on with them. You guys heard that term?
This is a really interesting meeting. So how do we go about that? Is this something that, I mean, if it has to get on the ballot, I mean, how do we do that?
We have Councilor Gravel draw up the necessary documents.
We can prepare a resolution and ordinance for, if you guys want to vote tonight to do it, we can get that prepared and you guys can approve that at probably, I don't know, in the next couple of meetings.
How does this tie with the use tax that the county got passed, specifically on vehicles? I mean, basically, they have it in place now, the voters approved it, they have it in place.
I don't know, did they get that approved by?
Yes, the voters.
Okay, I know the voters approved it, but I thought.
Yes, they got it passed.
So basically, they collect their sales tax on out-of-state purchases that are applicable in this situation, so whatever their sales tax, it just, they're stacking tax. So you have state,
Right.
county,
Just like-
municipal, so it would, it would just be in conjunction with it. And so I know it's an oversimplification. The statute that they passed regarding the use tax has some things that are still being, kind of reviewed. But basically, if you bought a boat, the original cases, a guy in Springfield bought a boat in Maryland, he didn't have to pay the local taxes if he bought it down the street. So it basically would apply those taxes for like, especially large sale items such as boats, cars, trailers, whatnot. They would pay that county tax, municipal tax, state tax, as if he bought that, locally.
And the one passed by the county does cover internet sales. It is a.
There's just no federal or state regulations
Right.
or laws.
And the enforcement of it's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's really honesty, where it's enforceable is where you have to license the vehicle.
Right.
Because then they have to come up and then.
That's
that's
right.
what
Exactly.
it's-
It's currently, you are required currently to pay sales tax on internet sales, but it's on an honor system.
Yeah, and I know, very few people do it.
Right. I don't know of anybody. You know what? I went to a presentation as.
Other than you.
Pick me because
I don't buy off the
you're
internet.
exactly.
I went to a presentation as the county one was on the ballot. And they emphasize that it's a fairness tax and that it levels the playing field for your local brick and mortar business that is at a disadvantage if they have to charge a sales tax, our local business, yet you can buy the same item from an out-of-state competitor and not pay the sales tax. So
Great person, doesn't
I think on a fairness level, it's good for the community, it's good for the businesses.
I'd like to make a motion that we have Counselor Gravel write up paperwork to put the implementation use tax on the upcoming ballot.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Casterly, seconded by Alderman Cornell, to have Councilor Gravel draw up the necessary papers to put the use tax on the April ballot. Any other discussion or concerns?
You said that better than I did.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Clark,
Yes.
Alderman Dreyer,
Yes.
Alderman Flake,
Yes.
Alderman Cornell,
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. I'm on the item 11, the IDA property ownership by the city. Mr. Shelton kind of addressed some of the issues there. We have the acreage in Truesdale across from Rebecca Boone School. I think presently the property is, or we have a lease with the IDA board is the best way to describe it. The IDA board has no money, so the city is making the interest payments and principal payments on that piece of property. IDA board, I've spoken with most of them, they would love to get out from underneath this, be happy to turn ownership over to the city. I've talked to the bank about the city taking over the loan, assuming the present loan, they have no issue with it, so it's just a question of whether the board wants to proceed in that direction or not. I would not like not to dissolve the IDA board because I think at some point in time, we are going to have a need for them and have a use for them to get them active again, so.
So we can take over ownership without dissolving the board.
Yes.
I'd make a motion
Yeah,
to.
and wait a minute, let me, is there you see any problems with that?
No, I mean, it's going to be a series of documents. We'll have a cancellation of the lease, a assignment of the property to us, some type of deed. I got to look and do some research on the deed, and then an agreement with the bank. But it sounds like, I know the mayor for a couple of weeks, if not months, have been talking to the bank about us taking over the loan. So I don't see, it just may take some time because it's going to be multiple documents because we have a corporate entity, the IDA board, a separate corporate entity, and the bank. So everybody's in agreement in principle.
I think it certainly cleans up the image, you know, and that was a question the auditors had. You know, why are you making payments for the IDA board? You know, good concern, so.
Do we need to take
Mayor, are
action?
they going to renegotiate the loan any?
My
interest
understanding
rates
is
have gone way
the
down.
city has no interest in renegotiating.
No.
The loan is pretty low now.
We'll stick with what we got.
My understanding is we'd have, if we could assign the loan, we could probably get rid of the property
Yeah.
by the end of the meeting.
Okay.
But,
So,
Do we need to take any action?
if you guys want to vote to approve it, that's
Yeah,
fine, then we can get the
approve doing
documents.
Make a motion to approve the transfer of ownership from the IDA to the city of Warrenton for the IDA property located in Truesdale.
Second.
motion by Alderman Cornell, seconded by Alderman Dreyer, to start the paperwork to approve the ownership of the IDA property from the IDA to the city of Warrenton. Roll call, please.
Alderman Clark,
Yes.
Alderman Dreyer,
Yes.
Alderman Flake,
Yes.
Alderman Cornell,
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly.
Yes.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 12, amended agenda items. We have none. Good. Item 13, Economic Development Director, Michelle Slenther.
Good evening. The first item I have for you is the economic development update. And I would like to point out that there's a ribbon cutting at Strictly Vapors Wednesday, October 30th at 3 p.m.
October 30th.
At where? Could you give us a little,
Strictly Vapors, it's on Steinhagen.
okay, what's the business?
It sells e-cigarettes.
Okay,
You know, the
yeah.
artificial drops.
It's on the north end of Steinhagen, correct? Over on the,
By Pizza Hut.
in that strip mall.
Okay. Do you know what time that is?
It is at 3 p.m.
3 p.m. So any alderman that's available is welcome to be at that ribbon cutting ceremony, including any staff or department chairmen.
I'm sorry, Michelle, one more time, what was the date?
October 30th, Wednesday, October 30th at 3 p.m.
You got it?
Mayor wants
I
to
got
know if there's going to be
2
any
o'clock.
elephants at the ribbon cutting?
No elephants.
No elephants.
I hope not.
Oh, it was worth a try.
All right.
The second item I have for you is a letter from the Missouri Department of Conservation for a community assistance program. They have a program where they'll have a conservation agent actually come out and work with Brad and his department to help make our lake at Binkley Park better, improve the fishing that's there, improve the quality of the lake. It's free to the city. All we have to do is sign an agreement with them, and they'll, if it's something they're interested in, they'll come out and do it. And Brad and I actually met with them someone, and she came out and she said she thinks it would be a good project for them.
I don't see why we wouldn't be interested. Any comments from the board on that?
If it's free, it's for me.
There. Did you hear Alderman Cornell's comment? He said if it's free, it's for me. We're very much into free, so.
I'd like to
We'd
request
even pay twice that much.
approval for the mayor to sign the letter.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to, for the mayor to sign the letter.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Cornell, seconded by Alderman Flake to allow the mayor to sign a letter in support of the Missouri Department of Conservation Community Assistance Program. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dreyer.
Yes.
Alderman Flake.
Yes.
Alderman Cornell.
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly.
Yes.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Alderman Clark.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
The next item I have for you is a request to submit a notice of interest for a hazardous mitigation grant. We received some information from Emergency Management Agency that they have a grant out there, and it's a 75 federal share, 25 non-federal share, and we're looking to use this for the low water crossing out by the treatment plant so that we can make sure we keep that road open. And right now, just wanting to submit a notice of interest. They're going to review those, and then if they feel our application is good, we'll come back and have to fill out a full application at that time.
Well, I think that's, I mean, we need to address that low water crossing anyway. I know Terry's been working with the engineers, and that's one of the concerns. We get stranded out there once in a while, and when that creek comes up, it comes up pretty rapidly. So I would think that would be a good thing for us. So what do you need from us on that, Michelle?
Approval to submit the notice of interest.
Make it a motion that we submit the notice of interest for the hazardous mitigation grant. Could you come up with anything easier to spit out?
Second.
Motion by Alderman Casterly, second by Alderman Flake to approve, to submit a notice of interest for hazardous mitigation grant.
And we gotta make an approval for a celebration for Arbor Day?
We could. Roll call, please.
Alderman Flake.
Yes.
Alderman Cornell.
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly.
Yes.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Alderman Clark.
Yes.
Alderman Dreyer.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
And the last item I have for you is to let you know that we're going to celebrate Arbor Day, November 1st, 2013 at 10 a.m. Brad will be planting some trees at City Hall, and we're going to announce the tree remembrance program and roll that out with that.
So we're all gonna watch Brad plant trees.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
What else you got?
That's all I have for you this
That's
evening.
it?
John wants to know what time. November 1st?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. I know you said it, I just didn't.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Thank
Two
you.
quick questions.
Yes.
One is, your report said there was 2 restaurants that acquired for information to come into the city. They initiated it? It said,
We had a chain that is looking to locate in Warrenton. They don't have a franchisee, so they came to me to see if we have someone who would be interested in a franchisee at this time. And then I submitted information, a request for information to two chain restaurants to see if we could meet their needs. A lot of them don't have what their needs are on their websites, so I call them, email them, send letters to them with information, trying to see what their demographic needs are so that we can see if we meet their needs.
the other thing I found interesting in the report at the very end, one of the members of the Economic Development Board suggested that they only asked the city for $9,000 so they could forego the audit, figuring there was a net. And he was told no.
There was a suggestion on that, but that there wasn't much of a discussion on that, so.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was humorous. It's one of our previous discussions.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Anything else for Michelle, from the board? I'm going to item 14, Director of Operations, Finance Officer Terry Thorne.
My first item for you this evening is a discussion of the property and liability insurance bid tabs. I believe that we have representatives here from both of the companies that submitted bids, both Tri-County Agency and the Daniel and Henry Company. There were 4 responses to the ads. There was one that met the bid specs in all respects. There were 3 that were submitted that did not meet the bid specifications in all the areas. There is a considerable difference in premiums between Savers, which is the one that met the bid specs, and the one that is closest in second to that, Atlantic Casualty, which is your second column on the sheet. I thought it was important that you all be aware of what was submitted. We've not considered in the past increasing our deductibles. It's always been the opinion of previous boards, for the most part, that we stayed with the low deductibles because it limited what we did not know might happen. Really gave us a much more, a number that was much firmer in what our potential outlay could be. But it was suggested by some that perhaps this is something that you all would want to have a discussion on. So we asked both companies to be here so that you could get any questions that you might have answered directly by their representatives.
I see we have Tri-Counties here, and what about Atlantic? Okay, and that's Jim Vernon and Todd Taylor?
That's correct.
And Julie, you want to introduce your other 2 gentlemen?
This is Jim Knox with Tri-County and Dan Holt, he's with Savers.
Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question before they talk? You said they were not materially the same in all aspects. What aspects weren't they the same?
The biggest difference is the difference in a couple of areas between a $1,000 deductible and a $5,000 deductible.
Okay, so that was on the property side, if I recall right?
Yes.
Property, and there's I think there's a difference, well, okay, it was just a property.
Something on earthquake also, wasn't there?
Yeah, on the earthquake coverage, as I understand it, what was included was a much lower coverage level. Brandy did go back and get what the increase would be with the earthquake that was comparable to bid spec. And I believe that number added an additional $14,366 to the total. So it was a considerable increase there. There was also a difference in the blanket coverage for the property. Our current policy, as I understand it, has a blanket coverage that basically covers property no matter what its location. The Atlantic Casualty policy did not initially submit a bid that had that type of blanket coverage. It was included in the contents portion of the coverage, but I understand that they have since come back and said, I believe that blanket coverage was made available. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Only on the contents.
On the contents.
Not on the building.
So those were the biggest differences between the two.
One of the things that jumps out at me, and maybe Julie can address that for us on the earthquake, it looks to me like our total coverage is in excess of $10 million, all of our structures, water towers, pumps, buildings, and everything. A 10% deductible on there, we're looking at $1 million deductible on earthquake. Is that?
That's standard.
That's standard. And I'm looking at the other 2 companies have a $25,000 deductible.
Yeah, and I know that with MoPerm, I can't speak for theirs, but I know with MoPerm, they do their whole insurance program differently in the fact
Mayor,
that they.
Just a minute.
They can't hear them.
Oh, would you come to the podium, please? I'm sorry. Start over.
Okay, on the earthquake, with MoPerm, it does have a $25,000 deductible. The problem with that earthquake quote, which doesn't meet bid specs, is that their whole program is set up to have $100 million that can be applied to all of their base customers. So you would have 10 million of that base. Somebody else might have another 30 million of it. And then
by the time it is all said and done, there's a major earthquake that hits this area, it exceeds 100 million, and you don't even get your $10 million covered, because they have a cap for all their customers. So, although that looks more appealing, the $25,000 deductible, the other aspect of it is on the back end, it's not so appealing either. So, I don't know if Dan wants to.
Yeah. Is that true about the, you're talking about MOPERM, is that true about the Atlantic
I
Casual?
can't speak
also?
for Atlantic Casual,
Can the
that's not
Atlantic
my
Casual
bag.
speak for that?
In Atlantic, the property.
You have to come up.
Hi, I'm Todd Taylor, and this is Jim Vernon. In answer to the question about the earthquake deductible, the company we represent carries a $25,000 deductible. On limits, by the way, that are one of the other differences that leads into this part of the question is the property limits that we submitted actually exceeded the bid specs based on replacement cost estimators that were made by underwriters that indicated increased values on 4 major properties. So, for example, this City Hall building, the bid specs called for, I believe, $1.4 million. Ours came in at $2.32 million. So the limits really are increased, and the deductible is $25,000 on the earthquake.
On the earthquake, okay.
And I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'd also like to address the deductible issue. We did an analysis of the deductible over the last 7 years and determined that the cost for the city over the last 7 years was about $1,700 per year, meaning that the deductibles weren't really in action because over the last 7 years there were no law enforcement claims, and there were only 4 property claims and I believe 1 public official's claim, and those totaled $12,000.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't there a law enforcement, didn't we have a law enforcement claim a couple years ago?
On the bottom.
That auto
Yeah.
that auto claim that's in there.
Yeah.
No, technically, that was an auto liability claim, it was
Gotcha.
not a law enforcement claim.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And the very bottom, John, of the
I got
scroll
it.
sheet is the
Yeah.
history.
I'm personally surprised that anybody wants to quote us, to be honest. I mean, in all honesty, as an underwriter, Jim, you know you very well. You just don't know me because I'm always the underwriter on the other side of the screen. I am shocked that anybody would want to bid us, to be honest with you. No, I'm being honest because I think, couple things. I think that bodes well for an incumbent who has lost their shirt and is still willing to quote us and cover us. I think that says something.
What do you mean by an incumbent that lost their shirt?
Their loss
Savers.
ratio.
Oh.
Our
Okay,
carrier
all
has
right,
lost their shirt on their cabbage.
Oh, we're back in cabbage. All right. I've been in a lot of insurance discussions, I've never heard the term cabbage applied.
No, but I have never heard the word cabbage to anything, so I thought I'd use it, nobody else would know either. I just have a couple thoughts on this. We talked a lot about earthquake, and we are not in a high earthquake zone. Earthquake doesn't bother me at all as a former property underwriter. In fact, probably wouldn't even worry about putting it on there, but because we like to cover our torsos, I would. The blanket basis coverage is superior anytime you want to look at a property coverage. The one thing that comes out to me, of all the things that comes out to me on these two, really, we're looking at 2 here to compare to pretty much, is I'm not all that happy about the B++ rating. So I did a little background on that to look into the company backing on that, whether I was satisfied or not. I don't know if you'd like to talk about that with Savers a little bit.
Thank you, I'm Dan Holt, I represent Savers. The B++ rating, that's something that happened to us once before, and during that last time when it went down, we actually bought a company during that, so obviously the finances were not that big of a problem. This time, we kind of got caught off guard with it because we didn't know it was coming about a month or 2 ago. we had 498 million in surplus, so that was our response to the rating company on that. So really, we don't see a problem. We can put it on an A paper if you would like. We have a mechanism to do that, but with the B++ right now, we've got about 2,500 policies in the state of Missouri. So obviously, it's business as usual for us.
What kind of premium level do you have with those 2,500 policies?
We write cities, counties, townships, road districts, water districts, levy districts. So we write policies anywhere from $1,000 up to, $300,000. We have quite the variety in there.
So total book of business under the B++?
Oh, we're probably looking at 17, 18 million. So, big program. We're the biggest carrier in the state of Missouri. It's been us and the MoPerm account was the biggest two for a long, long time. So, we have, one thing that we do have here that we don't see from the competitors today is that we're in, we've been here, we've got claims, loss control, we've got full staff all within a couple hours where everything's closed. We're big in Missouri. Our office that we use is actually in Kansas City, Kansas, but they do Missouri and Kansas both. So,
When you talk about that you could go to an A+ company, you're talking about a 5% increase of...
We found another company. If we have a customer that was concerned about it, we have a company that will use their paper for 5%. 5%. But we haven't had anybody really worried about it. It's just business as usual. Of course, the company we got is admitted in the state of Missouri. Like I say, claims, loss control, everything is set up for Missouri. Been going strong for about 30 years. We actually started, Savers started in Missouri in 1992. So, we're the biggest carrier in the state of Missouri roughly since we got going after 92. So, there's no problem.
Of all the business you write, how standard is the $1,000 deductible? Is that low or?
That's the standard.
That's the standard.
Of course, GL at 0, but everything else is 1,000 is the standard. There are exceptions, but I'd say the biggest percent of them are going to be on 1,000. Okay. Especially when you get into smaller accounts, they're not going to bump it. They can't do that financially. But this does create the certainty too that you need when you do 1,000. Either way, it's okay with us, but you do have that certainty.
And you have the capability of going to a 5,000 or
Sure.
10,000 without it?
Yeah, I think we actually have a number for you on that. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
I don't know if you guys have that yet.
I'm a blank liability person from the work I do. I'm more favorable to that than specific location basis. But in your opinion, is that worth 35% more premium?
In my opinion, for that coverage alone, I don't think your blanket is getting you that 35,000. I think your deductible's a pretty good chunk
Pretty good chunk of it.
of that.
Do we know what the chunk, if you had comparable deductibles, we'd be looking,
She probably has that number for us.
Yeah. So, yes, the difference was how much, 61? The total would be 138,546.
And that was just changing the deductible on three different areas to the 5,000.
so that's still
So $1,686 difference.
14,000 difference.
And now
No,
here's,
not 14.
Well, I'm taking the.
Yeah, you have to add it's about a 6,000 difference from theirs because they had like 118 plus their 14,000. So that brings it up to just over 132,000.
Well, I'm looking at the bottom line here. Yours right now has 147, theirs is 118.
yes.
Oh, okay.
And so you just said your
The
bottom's
difference between
131.
ours.
yeah, she was
Yeah.
trying the difference
Right.
between hers. She
Yeah,
can't speak for
138.
that.
No, I know that, but I mean, I'm looking now, 131, if you're comparing apples and apples, which you can never do that, you're looking at 131 versus 118.
Right. There is a significant difference. Can I go one more
Yeah, go
time
ahead.
and then you
Go
can
ahead.
have the
Sure.
floor? There is a significant difference, definitely something that is a concern to the city. Here's something, because I respect the time that both of these organizations have put into this. This is not an easy process. This is nothing like work comp rate times payroll. I understand it, okay? But we had this discussion in our audit, and we discussed this as a board. we had bid specs that we put out in the public that stated specifically what we were looking for, and those bid specs specifically stated all other bids would not be considered. So I think as a board, we have to look at that because we've put that out there. We have stated in our audit that, you know, fairness and who hasn't quoted if we were allowed to go off the bid. What other carriers decided not to bid because they didn't want $1,000 deductible. So I'm kind of struggling with, we've had a lot of discussion about this, and I probably should have said this right off the bat and stopped talking, but I have an issue considering quotes outside of what we said we were going to consider based on the ethical process of gaining quotes. I also was very shocked. I think, Terry, you heard the thud of me falling off my chair when I was told we bid this once every 7 years. I mean, so I think there's a lot of things as a board, we need to have a discussion about what we feel is important to our insurance policies, our coverages, what we expect in quotes, what are we willing to get options on, and time frame of getting quotes every 2 years, every 3 years, what do we feel is important. And I think that's a discussion that we need to have in this planning session. But for right now, making, you know, these decisions as a board, I have a really hard time going for anything that's outside of what our bid specs said. And I don't think we have time to say, okay, let's rebid.
Is this a bid spec that was for a longer period than one?
What?
Well, we talk about how often do we bid property and liability?
We did not specify the period it would be awarded for from this bid.
No, that was just a process how we've done it.
Right.
But that has nothing to do with these bids.
Right, no, but I guess the question was, as you're right, what I thought is if we accept a bid, you know, we're not on an obligation to keep it a certain length period. That wasn't part of the bid spec.
No.
It was just for this one process.
Correct.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, I think your point's very valid, but if we do go with the higher bid, I think we need to have that discussion about how often we bid. I think we also need to have a discussion about the deductible side, because you know, small organizations may carry $1,000 deductible, but I mean, my organization's got more than $10 million in property, and we carry a significantly higher deductible in terms of property and casualty, and I think that the numbers on the history would justify having a higher deductible, but that's a decision we can make after we award.
Not to interrupt you, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, if it's all right.
If y'all would let him, before I let Alderman Cornell jump in there.
She pretty much said everything I was going to say.
Shocking, because you usually say what I'm going to say.
And I guess before you get started, back to what Alderman Ock said, was your interpretation that you were bidding this on a one-year program, or
No, sir.
on a what?
No.
No. What was your?
What our impression was that you bid it every 7 years.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of. So when you were going
Well,
there,
yeah.
and that was my next
I've
question.
never
Is
been in a
this going to all?
situation where I've only bid every 7 years on property and
Yeah.
casualty.
It's a pretty good gig.
Yeah, that's a great.
Sorry, that's a great gig.
Yeah.
Would this alter your bid, or your bid, if we chose to do this on a one-year program or a two-year program? or
The
3 years?
insurance company doesn't quote for 7 years with the same bid. It's up to us whether or not we bid.
Would it alter this bid? No, sir, it would not.
Okay, all right, that was my question.
Sorry for interrupting you.
Okay, go ahead now, you're free.
Thank you. Karen, when we looked at this initially, we looked at the deductibles that were requested. And we looked at the coverages that were requested there. We knew that some of our insurance companies would not be able to get down to that low a deductible. So in your specifications, these are not intended to be restricted with respect to any innovative techniques for rating or provided coverage. If a distinct advantage can be demonstrated, bids failing to meet all of the specifications will not necessarily be rejected, but any deviations must be clearly noted. So we feel in our proposal we did note where we were different there.
No, and I do agree that I just think as a board, we've just been through an audit that was pretty strict on the old insurance placement decision.
But this does say that bids failing to meet all specifications will not be rejected. And I think what Todd talked about on the deductibles a minute ago, we look back over your last 7 years. We are different in 3 areas: property, law enforcement, and public officials. If you would have had our deductibles over that 7-year period, your additional claim cost would have been $12,000, $1,700 a year, and you're saving $30,000 a year. I think that's quite a distinction there. Couple other things while I'm up here. You mentioned the blanket limit. I agree with you. Anytime a blanket limit would be better than specific, everything else being equal. When we got the specs and started looking at the values, there were some that just didn't look credible from a valuation standpoint. There were 4 in particular, 4 larger ones. This building was valued at $1,400,000, which is $107 a square foot. When we ran it through the appraisal calculator, it came out to $2,300,000. We looked at 4 of them, so what we had to do was actually increase the values that we were quoting for you all to be able to even get them to quote on a specific building basis. I think one of the services that we can offer for you is to look not only at these 4, but at the other buildings that you have there to see that they are valued correctly. Because even with the blanket limit, you may run into a co-insurance problem if you're not insured to the correct values there. And we do have the $25,000 deductible on the earthquake, which is much different than the $1 million. We're giving you higher limits on the public officials. You asked for $1 million, we're giving you $2 million per occurrence, $4 million in the aggregate. Same thing on employment practices, $2 million per occurrence, $4 million in the aggregate. A-rated carrier. Overall, I think we've got a good program for you. And I like the fact that, depending on your thoughts on the earthquake, being $30,000 lower, I think is a pretty good savings for the city there.
And this is Essex Insurance?
Mm-hmm. Essex and Atlantic Casualty.
Can I make a suggestion? I think Julie wants to say a few words, because she's anxiously holding on to the seat, but would it be reasonable, Karen, for us to table it and then sit down with some kind of scoring system? Because there are certain things that have different value. You've talked a lot about the earthquake insurance for you doesn't have as much value as something else. Just kind of lay it out on a value basis.
Do we have time for that, Terry?
I don't believe that you can. Originally, we had bids that were due much earlier, but at the request of one of the potential bidders, we extended the period of time. Now we're up against a November 1st renewal date.
Oh, it's a November 1st.
Can we
Yeah.
have a special meeting to discuss it?
You
to go
could have a
through it?
special meeting as long as we get it done by November 1st. I don't see a problem with that. And I'm not sure, sir, where you are reading from about the bid specs, but in your package, you have a copy of the advertisement, which does say specifically that the bid needed to meet the specifications.
Is that from your proposal?
No, that's from you guys.
It was revised, so there's a revision to it somewhere?
Yeah, I don't know which one he has, but I'm going to tell you that it's...
But it was in the original advertisement that went out, and you all have a copy. Yes. So if you, Karen, if you wanted to have
What did you say?
If you wanted to have a special meeting, we could certainly do that specifically for this.
Yeah.
But we need to have a decision by November 1st.
No, I think we should, because I think there's things that, Jim, we just had an audit, that this was one of the major issues that they discussed. We need to make sure we're doing it properly as a board. And are we saying there's a different bid spec posting?
There's not a different bid spec. The language that he was referring to, I think was in the original paperwork that went out. I don't have all of that paperwork here that Brandy had, but I know there were several revisions that went out to all the potential bidders after that.
Okay, I'd like to see how that played out as well. But I think in all fairness to this decision, because there is significant differences between the quotes, I think as a board, we should sit down and do our due diligence with the rating system and determine amongst ourselves what we feel to be the most important pieces. That's my opinion. I'm just one of six.
I would agree with you 100%.
I'm going to follow up on what Alderman Kessley said. One of the things that jumped out at me right at the beginning when I dug into this stuff, we've got a little over $10 million worth of assets here. And in the last 7 years, we've had $730,000 in claims paid out. And I'm thinking, why would anybody want to quote our business, with that kind of loss history? Not good. It's not a good thing. So
I think it's a good sign for the market that people are bidding.
Yep.
I don't mind having a special meeting. It sounds like we need to discuss this. My problem is, no matter what we discuss it, if we need a decision by November 1st, we can't have a special meeting and rebid it by November 1st.
No, we'll have to make a decision based on what we have.
Okay, we're going to come back to the same, that one bid meets the specs.
And I have one other question before we get off that, and I asked Julie that. I noticed Tri-County has 3 bids. Why would you bid 3 different companies?
Podium, please. Can you come to the podium?
We bid the 3 different companies because first and foremost, I gave those to you strictly because I wanted to show you that we did approach other carriers and those other carriers did offer bids. And if you, I'm going to tell you, I straight out, that going off bid specs during bidding is very slippery slope and going forward. This kind of stuff actually can be taken care of with your current carrier, whichever carrier that would be, to go, okay, now we want to see what the $5,000 deductible is. We want to see what this looks like without earthquake. Do you guys have other earthquake options other than the 10%? Savers offered that bid spec just the way it was, because that was the assignment, so to speak. So, and just so you know, the reason it's bid every 6 years is because that's kind of where this, the loose interpretation of the statute is, and it's 6 years that we have bid it every 6 years. I mean, not that 1 year makes a big difference, but that's my biggest concern is once you go off bid specs, you set a precedent for yourself, and that's a tough one because, like you guys have mentioned, Savers has come back and offered a great quote for you guys. I know it feels like it's a lot difference in the premium on the surface, but when you start digging, it's only really about $6,000 difference at this point. So, a couple little tweakings and stuff, and we're probably right at the same thing if we start, tweaking taking the blanket coverage off and stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend you take the blanket coverage off because I think that's important. Our blanket covers everything. It's on the building, it's on the business personal property. It is on the whole thing. So as far as the co-insurance limits, that's not really an issue for Savers. They're aware of what they're on, and so my thing is, going to the other carrier is not going to save you $30,000 a year. I think that's a misstatement between the 2 bids. As far as the building values, absolutely we can take a look at them. We've looked at them in the past, and it's always good to take another look at them every so often anyway. But again, that's something that you would want to take into consideration after you guys have, made a decision on what carrier you want to go with. That's my opinion. The other thing is, don't forget that in that packet, it's not to do any disservice to Dan, but that MOPRM bid is in there, and that's actually lower than the one that they're presenting with a lot of the same types of coverages. I think it's probably now that it's about a $14,000 difference. MOPRM is lower. So it's not like if you're going to actually decide to go off the bid specs, which again, I wouldn't recommend, you're going to have to take that into consideration as the MOPRM thing, and then we have to talk about those issues as well.
Is MOPRM really not an insurance company, it's a cooperative?
MOPRM's actually a division of the state government.
State government, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of interpreted on it too.
I mean, because I think we need to go to your point, Julie, I think we need to have a discussion about MOPRM too.
Yeah.
I mean, to be quite frankly, just as you were talking, I was reading comparing Savers and MOPRM to see where the differences were, and, there are some differences, but, it looks competitive. If you're going off spec, like you said, if you're going off spec, I think you have to look at MOPRM also.
Going off specs is...
That's the decision I think that you're going to make is, are you going to go off specs?
Yeah.
And then, to be fair to your incumbent who has offered you what I think was, fair, they met all the bid specs, they didn't make you change your deductibles. MOPRM, I asked for a $1,000 deductible, and they're going, no way, I'm not giving you a $1,000 deductible, which is the same thing that they're encountering. These other carriers aren't wanting to do that. So to be fair, we have to go back to them and say, okay, well, now these are the new bid specs, if you're going to go that route.
Changing the bid specs, it's not fair to the vendors who are, all of a sudden, you're shooting at a moving target and
Exactly.
an undefined target.
Yeah, and they were kind enough to go back and try to look at the $5,000 deductibles to be a little bit more comparative, but there were things that we weren't going to, I was not going to quote off a blanket without you guys saying that you didn't want a blanket coverage. That is not something I would recommend.
And I'm not sure that we've ever failed to meet a bid spec. I mean, it can be done. Savers can do it in any situation typically. We've been 30 years in Missouri of writing insurance. Savers since '92. We know our competitors. She called and told me that Atlantic Casualty and Essex was bidding. I honestly never heard of them. So I did a little research, and I still can't really tell you who they are. So that's one of my concerns, is that I don't know how many accounts they have in Missouri, but we never run into them. So Missouri, every state has different laws, different statutes set up for public entities. Claims have to be handled separately, differently in different places. We do Missouri. That's what, I just want to bring that up. That's what we do. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our concern here is, from what I'm hearing, you all want to have a special meeting, and we're going to talk,
I think it's
to decide
important.
just on the insurance.
Yeah, I think it's important to do so.
Yes, I agree.
What's our calendar like? We need to do it probably next week.
No.
Do it tomorrow? Miss 2 ball games in a row?
Gotta do it pretty quick.
Can't do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Have you got a date, Terry, that we could squeeze this in?
We don't have anything scheduled for next week, do we, Melody?
Not to my knowledge.
Pick a day, board, pick a day next week, and we'll just have a,
I'm available on Monday.
how about Monday?
Monday won't work for, you know what? Pick your day. I am tied up, I believe, every night next week.
I can do Monday, Thursday, Friday.
I'm open every night, so.
You're open every night? And you're open every, you don't do anything anyway. You're tired. Fred, you open?
Fine.
And Jim?
Anytime.
John, it's you.
You know what? Set it and I'll see if I can cancel on any particular night. But right now they all look.
I would prefer Monday, if
Monday?
all possible.
Monday?
John.
Monday,
Can you-
time-wise?
Can you cancel that one?
I don't know. I'm talking about a guy with the plight of small kids and a working wife, so
I hear you.
I'll do what I can.
Okay. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock? What's your pleasure?
Gary, 6 is fine with me, I don't care.
6? 6 o'clock Monday. And we'll finalize the insurance bid.
I think it's the PM.
I can be in the AM if you want. I'll be looking pretty.
Okay.
I would appreciate the meeting just because I don't understand anything about insurance at all.
Well, that's great. That's just good learning.
Well, we have lots of openings in the industry. If we teach you enough, you'll be set.
You'll be.
That's fine, I heard you.
All right, we're going to move on. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your, and ladies, your input.
I think everybody came from quite a distance, so thank you.
Terry, do you have any more operational updates?
Just to let you know that at your desk tonight, you had paperwork. On the front of it, it says pre-meeting survey. This is your homework in preparation of the planning session. There are instructions on the first page. Basically, we took the 2005 planning session, put it into a format so that you can re-rank those things that were determined in the 2005 session. We will then take those, put that information together, do some average scoring so that we're prepared for the planning meeting to start the discussions on those topics. So I think it'll save a lot of time.
And exactly what was that we have in front of us?
It's called a pre-meeting survey.
Oh, the paper one. I was looking at the envelopes. Gotcha.
Your homework is due by next meeting.
Did we get graded on it?
No grades.
No grade. Pass fail?
Nope, no grades. No grades.
And you want the audit reports back from our auditors?
Those that you had at your desk tonight, we will use next meeting. Alan Shelby from Bottsville will be here. So if you take it home with you, remember to bring it back. Since we don't have packets anymore, we had to have a way to get it to you prior to the meeting.
Okay.
So.
You want to scan the whole thing in?
No. Not when we had an opportunity to leave it here. The only other thing I have for you is to just let you know that Gabrielle has a new son. I lost the bet. I thought it was a girl. Jax Evan was born on October 9th at 4:16 a.m. by the nurses, not the doctor. Weighed 8 pounds, 5 ounces, and was 22 inches long.
Can we have Melody prepare a card from the board or something, or?
Sure.
And, we'll
I'm sure
all sign it and
Gabrielle
send it to her?
And that's all I have for you this evening.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gavers, Public Works Director.
Mayor and Board, first item I have is the monthly report. Been getting the wastewater plant ready for winter. Getting some basins emptied.
I just love reading about the sludge meter. Sorry.
You would if it quits.
Any questions?
Well number 6 pumps 9,953 gallons a month. Why does that pump more than the other wells?
That's feeding the other wells. It'll go in cycles, and one well can feed another well.
Okay.
So it's filling up, like it'll run to well 6, pump to well 7, keep that tower full, and then it'll rotate. But that's probably the...
So it doesn't have a bigger pump or a larger?
It's a smaller pump, and it works, well, now it's the same size, so it's feeding the other wells, because all the wells can feed from one well to the other.
Yeah, I knew they were all interconnected.
Right.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Gavers?
Next item I have is the ready-mix concrete bid. And I'd like to go with Schreider ready-mix.
And the reason is?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, the reason is?
It's a closer haul. And the other one's coming from Wentzville.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it looked like a lot of these, like the 8-sack price, the 6-sack price were all cheaper, but the haul is a critical factor in this.
Closer, and
instance.
then the 6-sack is what we mostly use. We do use some 5-sack, but 6-sack is what MoDOT specs are, so we kind of go with that. And I sat down and figured out all my concrete that we have bidded out for the year, what we plan on using, and the difference come up to be $162.50 price-wise, and then it's closer to us. So that's why I went with that.
Make a motion that we accept the Public Works Director's bid for ready mix. From who? From
Schreider.
Schreider out of Wright City.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Ock, seconded by Alderman Clark to accept the Public Works Director's bid for ready-mix concrete from Schreider Concrete out of Wright City. Roll call, please.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
Yes.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Next item I have is if we need to proceed with Hickory Lick Road improvement, to go out for RFQs.
You're asking the board if they want
me to proceed with it. I know we tabled it before to see.
I know we discussed that briefly, and you know, we tabled it because of the large expense, and I thought we were going to get some engineering bids on it to see, to get a firm price, but evidently we haven't gone that far yet.
No, I need that approval, and I have to go out for
Need that
RFQs.
Well, I think we do need to get the engineering done.
Yep.
I mean, I still think that since we're doing long-range planning, and this is a huge project, that before we make a final decision, we need to go through that long-range planning process.
I think there's another issue that we do have some money left from the, what do we call it, the neighborhood stabilization program, that we could lose if we don't earmark that for something. They could take that back. So that was another reason to kind of move forward with it.
What kind of time frame before we lose?
We don't. They could call up tomorrow and say, you haven't used it, we want it back. I don't think they would, that's sharp.
There's no indication that that would happen, but things are very unstable with those kinds of things now.
What kind of engineering costs would you anticipate to do, just a preliminary to give us a rough?
Originally, and remember this was in the '09 estimate, engineering was $92,000. We anticipated a 10% increase since then, so $100,000, give or take.
Can they do less than that to give us an estimate? So we know what kind of, if we're really talking about $1 million or we're talking about $1 million?
I can't answer that
I
question.
think it would be hard to have a good or a firm estimate without having it engineered out. I think we're kind of, grasping in the air there that I would be uncomfortable taking a price without having it engineered and thinking we were going to get it done for that, so.
I'd make a motion to proceed with engineering on the Hickory Lick Road improvements.
Second. You got it.
Motion made by Alderman Cornell, seconded by Alderman Flake to move forward with having the Hickory Lick Road Improvement Capital Project engineered out. Any further discussion on it? Roll call.
Alderperson Casterly?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
No.
Alderman Clark?
No.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Motion carried 4-2. Anything else for Mr. Gevers?
That's all I have.
That's all you have? All right, Mr. Hamp, zoning officer, building commissioner.
First thing I have is the monthly building department and maintenance report for you.
How many new homes permits have we had this year? As of up to date?
New homes, 4.
New home construction, yes.
I believe 4.
How many?
I believe 4.
4. So we're very close to last year. We haven't changed very much there.
Check them all out like 3 times each.
You have? Or-
No, I-
Oh, I would imagine and then some. Yeah, it's not hard to keep up with that.
Yeah, well, he's got 14 new residential inspections is what I...
Oh,
We only have 4 new homes so far this year,
I believe so.
and 3 of them are on,
3 on Roosevelt and Cannon. And 1.
over on Roosevelt?
yeah,
Avenue?
the 3 near the, wow.
In your backyard.
Yeah. Are you disappointed and sad that there's only 8 open weed ordinance violations still existing, or?
No, sir. It won't be long, I think the weed problem will be finished for a while,
You're probably right.
as soon as frost kicks in.
Any other concerns for Jack with the building and property maintenance report? Okay. Jack, we're ready for 16B, Paddock Field subdivision issue.
Yeah, I was just wanting to bring to the board's attention that out at Paddock Fields, there's some of the plats, or one of the plat is officially recorded. There's 2 plats that have not been recorded, and we've accepted streets and sewers up there, and we're just wanting to make you aware of it and decide how we want to move forward.
Well, Counselor?
Well, it's a complicated issue because this occurred fairly long ago. There is no estoppel argument against a government entity. However, we have been servicing individual lots with water and sewer. In addition to that, the 2 streets that are unplatted subdivisions or unplatted trailer parks, we've been plowing the snow really since we took over. To be perfectly honest with you, I think we would have a very difficult road to hoe in a declaratory judgment action to say that these aren't legal subdivisions, because they would immediately point probably to this video they'd probably play from this meeting tonight and say, their own attorney said this. They would immediately point to our water and sewer service and our plowing of the streets to say, you did accept these de facto, although you didn't legally accept them under the statute and the ordinance. It's not the first time we've kind of, in our beginning of zoning, that we've kind of looked back and said maybe this wasn't done completely correct. My suggestion would be that I contact the owner of the property and say, let's come up with some type of ordinance to kind of get this plat recorded, get it corrected. To undo it would be very difficult and I think costly to the city, and I don't know that we're really, would be in a position to be successful in that situation. We do have some legal arguments that are present, but to be perfectly honest with you, I just don't think they would be very strong considering our actions to recognize them. They've been pretty open and notoriously, notorious not in a negative sense, that's a legal term, open and notoriously operating as subdivided plats for quite a while.
What would it accomplish anyway?
That would be the question.
You've got a setup there where you're performing and acting like it's the case, and to push the point would be of what value?
And that really would be the point. I think the lawyers would do fairly well in the situation, but I'm not sure the city would be really better off, and they could come back and apply, and you'd be right back to square one. So my suggestion, if it's okay with the board, and I don't think I need a vote, if I can just get some indication, is reach out to the owner of the property and say, we've got an issue here, let's get these recorded, let's get them approved by the city and planning and zoning, and get some type of agreement done to get those recorded. Because really this came up because we've been issuing building permits for years for various structures on the trailers and whatnot. However, there's no really building lines out there, but we've been issuing them, so working off plats are unrecorded. So I'd like to work with Jack to try to clean that up a little bit and kind of bring it up to a workable solution to where we are right now, so we can really, make sure that they're having a fence within some type of setback, not just in the middle of one lot.
Would this become an issue if the owner of Paddock Field sold to another owner? that they could get a clear title without the plats being recorded?
It's been recently sold and purchased.
Okay,
So
and that was not an issue.
I assume it wasn't an issue. I don't really know. It was, I think it was not going to come in the city, then it was going to come in the city. Historically, it's kind of difficult to understand exactly the transaction, but yeah, it cleared title, I would assume, because I know it's a different owner than it was when it came into the city, and it's a different owner after that, too. So I know it's changed hand at least 3 times, do you think, Jack?
I'm not 100% sure on that.
They're not in the city? I thought they were in the city.
Well, they are now, but when they came in,
Okay.
it was kind of a back and forth
Right.
situation, like it was platted before it came into the city, but then it wasn't, it was replatted and whatnot. It's easier to just work it out. I wanted to make the board aware of that because I didn't want the board, I know there's been compliance issues with paddock fields, but I think that's the best solution for paddock fields with that issue.
Well, I see that I signed one of these ordinances back in 1990, so don't expect me to remember what we did. I'm gonna have to depend on Fred. I'm gonna have to depend on Fred for that one.
No, we recognize some signatures on there.
I really don't remember.
Karen's taught me I need to watch what I sign pretty closely.
On zoning issues, it's always easier to look back.
You never know what comes back to haunt you.
That's right. So you need a motion from the board?
No, I think if that's okay, I'm going to go ahead and proceed that way and have a
Anybody have
discussion.
an objection to that?
And then if we'll bring something back if I can formalize something.
All right, let's move forward with that then. I think that's the only fix in store, to be honest with you.
Yeah, reasonably, I think it's the only
I
fix.
think so too.
Jack, do we have any control or anything to do with the condition of used trailers that are being pulled in out there? Boy, some of them are in pretty bad shape.
As far as if they have exterior problems, yes, sir.
Well, some of them are pulling in, it's pretty rough.
Are they pulling them in to set them up?
And rental.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And they are
They're
early
well used.
1980s vintage and.
They're well used.
Are they rough in the sense that they're structurally not sound, or don't look good, or are they rough just because they're old?
Just haven't been
I can't
picked
imagine.
up in shape.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just rough, they're ragged looking.
Usually the first thing that goes in those is the floor, but you can't really see that.
I didn't know
until you're
whether
in.
we had some control over the condition that they're bringing in there or not.
We do not have a policy to do occupancy
You know,
inspections or
most
permits.
mobile home parks will have a year limit on how old it can be before they let it come in. Obviously, this one's not adhering to that.
Montgomery County has that.
We've had a lot of discussions recently about paddock fields. Hopefully, the public and the board and you, Mayor, have seen some improvements. Because I know that their property maintenance manager has called me more than one time about the fact that they're spending a lot of money to get property in compliance, and how can we make them do that? I know Jack's been working diligently on it. I think there's been inconsistent enforcement with paddock fields. We have everybody on the same page, including the owners of the company. I would ask to take a little bit of time to see if that's improving the conditions out there. It's something we've been talking about. Is there something we can do regarding some type of occupancy permit for certain trailers and whatnot? And we're looking at it. I just don't think we're prepared to give you an answer, yes or no, because right now, we're trying to deal with the overwhelming neglect on the property maintenance out there. And I think part of that is the city really trying to be, really Jack being diligent about it and making sure it's black and white, there's no gray. So I would ask that if we can have a little bit of time with that, then we can work on something with the older trailers, because that's been a complaint for a very long time with paddock fields bringing old trailers in there.
And I completely believe that if you guys drive through there, it does look better today than it did 1st of June. We are making progress out there.
We'll take a cruise out there and eyeball it ourselves, so.
And any lot specific, just email me or Terry if you see an item, definitely run out there.
Okay. Any other questions for Jack? Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to move on to item 17, Maintenance and Grounds Director Brad Boozer-Cruz.
Good evening. You have my monthly report. Nothing really big. Still cutting a lot of grass and kind of starting all over again with cutting grass. So it's about all I have.
You stayed here all night just to tell us that.
Just down.
Dedicated. I'm sorry, that was very worthy of you staying, Brad, but thank you.
You actually found grass to mow in this dry weather, huh?
Yeah, it's still growing.
When I mow mine, it just crunches up in a little dust, so.
We've getting enough rain where we've been.
Yeah,
lot of
it'll
dust.
green back up.
planting everything, so.
Any other questions for Brad? You could have been home watching the ball game.
Yep.
We didn't get you up.
He was watching it on his iPad
Oh, was he?
anyway.
Do we have a score?
I don't know that.
John, you can look at-
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
I'm ready for the Chief Body Shells report.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I do have the monthly report from September for your perusal. Pretty standard stuff there. No ride-alongs for September, but...
I did download the form.
Okay, Chris has downloaded the form, so hopefully we're moving forward there.
There we go.
One thing I did want to note on the detective report that they kind of glossed over, but I thought was kind of a cool PR thing. They were asked by Mr. Oliarnik at the high school to do a presentation to 2 classes. They put together, based on a real case, basically a walkthrough of an investigation. So they hit, I don't know, between 50 and 60 kids up there at the high school with this presentation. And the biggest deal out of that was so many of them were shocked that CSI is so wrong. That it actually can't get solved in an hour. So, you know, a lot of the kids that thought that they wanted to go into law enforcement because they could solve cases in an hour probably changed their mind as a result of that. But it was a good PR gig nonetheless. So, any questions about the monthly report?
You kids have a lot of questions for him?
They did, yeah. They did about a 35-minute presentation and then spent the rest of the hour answering questions. And
good.
They did come up with some good questions. It was good.
Those are always fun to do.
They are. The only other thing I had tonight is a request to hire Tony Tweet. It's actually a rehire. Tony was with us from January of 2011 to September of 2012. Was a good police officer. Left us to go into the private sector for a while. Really missed the job and has requested to come back. So, with your blessing.
I remember when he left, and I spoke with him, I think he had reservations about leaving because he truly does like being a police officer. And
He does.
He said if he ever got back into this business, he would like to come back to Warrenton. And so you never know what's gonna happen.
What is the salary that we are hiring him back in at? Is that starting out, or is that coming back to what his exit rate?
That's the new starting salary.
Okay.
And then after he gets off of FTO, there's a bump as well.
Right,
out of it.
but he's coming in at starting salary
Yes.
again?
Yeah.
No benefits or
No.
just like a new hire?
Right.
Okay.
Let's see, Personnel Committee Chairman is Alderman Clark, and Alderman Ock, and Alderman Dreyer. Do you all have any concerns with bringing Mr. Tweet back on board?
No.
Entertain a motion. And that's your recommendation, Chief?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the rehire of Anthony Tweed at $16.73 an hour as a police officer.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Cornell, seconded by Alderman Dreyer to approve to hire Anthony Tweet at the rate of $16.73 an hour as a police officer. Roll call, please.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
Yes.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
And just as a word to the Personnel Committee, and I know at one time you all had some criticism that you weren't being informed enough of interviews and stuff. Are you getting informed on that now? And
Yeah, I'm pleased.
you're pleased? You are, John, as well, and Jim. You all are welcome to sit in on those interviews, you know that. And if you have that time, and you're welcome to pop in and sit through them all. Okay, Where are we at here? Melody? Your turn.
What I have for you tonight, it was a project that was approved in the capital budget. It is window covering for the chambers, which would be the 3 windows there from when there's training. They're blackout blinds that would be pulled down in order to better see the projector screen when it comes down, because it's pretty well really light, which I'm sure you guys have seen during meetings, it's pretty light. So help out during training and different things like that in here.
Would we do something with the door?
No, the door can't be blocked.
No, but I mean, could we darken the shading on the glass, is my point.
That would be a Brad question. I'm sure there's probably something that we could get to get on there. I know, it's all Brad's fault.
Okay.
But if you could just cover the windows, that would certainly help darken the room enough.
Correct, because they're going to have to be blinds that's going to have to go up inside the framework, because when the projector screen comes down, it actually is next to the windows.
Gotcha.
So it will actually cover part of the door, just not all of it. The bottom portion will still be open.
Okay.
And this was actually a project that was budgeted for up to $2,000.
And what was the total price?
Well, when I went and talked to them, they were on sale at the time for the $524 a piece, but she said that they were regularly $600 because she said the sale was going off. Well, in the meantime, she had given me a call and said she thought that they would still be on sale, but she wouldn't be able to talk to her supplier, which I believe is Graver, was the name that was on there, until the following week, which was Monday. And I haven't actually had a chance to listen to my voicemail messages yet to find out. But either way, if they're still not on the sale price of the $524, $600 is the regular price. So we're still underneath the $2,000 budget.
Okay.
Make a motion, we purchase the window coverings for the chamber at a price of no more than $600 per unit.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Ock, seconded by Alderman Cornell, that we purchase the window covering as presented at no more than $600. Is that for the pair or each window or?
A piece.
A piece, $600. And how many?
3.
3, okay. That's $600 apiece. And I need a roll call on that.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Alderman Cornell?
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly? Yes. Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Anything else, Melody?
Nope, that was it.
On item number 20, bills to ordinance, bill number 46-13. And I'll remind the board that this is not a raise for Jerry Dyer, it's a raise for the next mayor, whoever that might be.
Make a motion to introduce bill number 46-13 for first reading.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Ock, seconded by Alderman Clark for first reading of bill number 46-13.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 1705 regarding the salary for the mayor of the city of Warrenton.
Call for the second final reading and passage of bill number 46-13.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Flake, seconded by Alderman Dreyer for second, final, and reading and passage of bill number 46-13.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 1705 regarding the salary for the mayor of the city of Warrenton.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Flake?
Yes.
Alderman Cornell?
No.
Alderperson Casterly?
No.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Clark?
Yes.
Alderman Dreyer?
Yes.
Motion carried 4-2. The no votes, would you all like a comment for the records?
Oh, well. Certainly it's nothing, like you said, against Mayor Dyer. The city's been good to me. I certainly don't do this for the money, and I just think that right now it's appropriately compensated.
And I agree as well. My comments are well noted from the last meeting.
Okay. If there's nothing else on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Cornell, second by Alderman Kessley to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. We're adjourned.